Okay, I have to make this video, but it's a video that must be made. People, it wasn't just Star Wars Disney ruined and they bought Lucasfilm. It was so much more. So apparently, I think what they did, I don't like what they did. I see what they, apparently, I'm going to start the video talking about Disney adults before moving on to the subject of Star Wars. So, first of all, congrats for Disney for creating a bunch of adults who are cultishly addicted to your brand, even though you failed to capture Gen Z. Men, congratulations. But screw you for screwing over Star Wars. In the process, you did not have to do that. You did not. You didn't have to call your fans phobe and lash out the fans when they criticize you for your bad storytelling. I will get to how other studios actually responded to that criticism better later, even with the live action film, which I will count. Okay? But anyways, here we go. So before, people were going out of Disney back in the early 2000s, and to Pixar, and because Disney didn't want to be left behind, they bought Pixar, and people thought, oh, it was well with the world, right? Well, apparently not, because Disney swore to protect whatever asset Pixar had, and that included assets from their former parent company, Lucasfilm, who let them go in the 80s. I think that was a big mistake for Lucasfilm to do that, because they could have been one of the big 6 media companies today, which is now looking more like to be the big 4, thanks to Disney. If it weren't for Lucasfilm, it could have been a big 5 if Lucasfilm, didn't sell it to Disney, and didn't let go of Pixar, encouraging them to sell it to Disney. That was their biggest mistake. Second biggest mistake, selling to Disney. Third, saving Leslie Henton's life, which created the Acolyte, they say. According to some YouTuber, I don't actually count the third, but I will mention it because it did cause one of the writers to just go crazy. Do whatever the hell we want with the franchise. You can't just do with the already established franchise. You could do it with the original story, but when creating when creating something in a pre-established franchise, you gotta play by that franchise's rules. And I think the Super Smash Bros. Company is gonna well understand that better than even Nintendo did. But yeah, let's just start with the basics. Disney fucked Star Wars up. They fucked it up after they bought it. They think I know what they're thinking. Thinking, we can buy up Star Wars and Marvel, fuck up whatever we want at first. Keep the fans roped, try to do as well as we could for the first several years, then fuck up even more. And fans won't care about our sludge because they'll be roped into the brand and locked to the adolescent age of 8 for years. This is why I re-uploaded the Disney wants you to grow up but not grow out of them. Because that's what creates Disney adults. Believe it or not, Disney adults do have mature values only because it taught them to grow up but not grow out of them. And that's a problem. But anyways, Disney basically just confirmed my worst fear. They honestly don't care anymore. The damage is already done for Star Wars, but aside from that, let's say this. It wasn't just Lucasfilm they screwed up when they bought the franchise. They canceled a lot of shows, a lot of games. And grew up a lot of developers. Visceral Games was screwed up by EA. I gotta believe EA was screwed up by them, even though EA was part of the problem. Although they're trying their best still. They're at least doing some good things with the Jedi games. I'll at least credit them for that. I don't think EA knew what the hell they were doing. I mean, you know how, like, people hate EA games nowadays? That used to be LJN. Yeah, that used to be LJN. LJN just made crappy game after crappy game and manipulating Nintendo into, like, giving them the seal of quality on it so that they can sell crappy licensed movie games based off movies that people liked. That's why I like Terminator 2D No Fate so much, because it broke that. It just broke it. But yeah. It just broke it. But yeah. And because of that, I will say this. I'm going to say one thing. I'm just mad at what they did to the games side of things. They didn't just screw up the games itself. They screwed up other studios who were starting to work on games based off Star Wars within their own franchises. I will take Little Big Planet as an example. Yes, believe it or not, Sony was working with Lucasfilm to create a Little Big Planet Star Wars game. Not a level pack, a game. A whole game dedicated to Star Wars. And Disney shut that down, forcing them to rush Little Big Planet 3 to meet the quota. And you know what happened after that? If you're a Little Big Planet fan, you already know. Sony shut down Little Big Planet servers. The servers decayed until they shut them down. And the only hope we have is a Copian hope that Media Molecule, those purple controller in front of the Little Big Planet logos, might mean something Little Big Planet related. Which I hope it does, because that means this franchise didn't get killed off by Disney through a chain reaction of events. I'll get back to Sony later and how they're doing better on the animation side. You know, I used to blame Sony for killing Little Big Planet, which only amplified my distaste for the fact that they didn't even pay another $400 for PS4 Pro, but look, I'm okay with them now. In fact, I like them a lot because of what they're doing to the animation side, and because the PlayStation, they're actually extending the PS5 lifespan due to which a lot of people think we didn't get that much for this system generation. So they extend it so that the generation could at least have some games to call its own. Primarily GTA 6, which might be the system game of the generation. Yes, I know it's abnormal to have a 10-year console gen, but believe me, people aren't ready to move on to 6 yet. Talk about how that... I will say in another video how that's going to give Nintendo an opportunity to do better. I mean, you've already said it. I don't think it'll sell well as Switch 1. I do think it'll do well. However, I will say this. You have a big problem, Disney. Because not only did you do that, you'll screw up my other childhood love company. TT Games. Still alive, still kicking around a little bit. It's like Media Molecule's still alive and still kicking around a little bit. It's like I am. Thing is, though, with TT Games, they only have one game made. Because you made them bit off more than they could chew with the Skywalker saga. And yes, I am blaming that towards you. That's why we're only getting one LEGO game right now. And they're refusing to do any pre-order bonuses that won't be in the game later on as a DLC. I'm not kidding. This is probably why I'm just going to wait to get into I'm Ungrounded. Get the Switch 2 edition if I can. Gold version since it's coming out later. And get a PS5 version if I can get gold. Fine, I'll do it. After them. But yeah. That too. But yeah, then you have the fact that they're not as kicking, and not only that, but because they're owned by Warner Bros., Netflix is buying them out, and they might have to sell off the company to somebody who could do a better job. I would love if I started a video game company to help take them under my wing as one of my studios. I would do that. But yeah. And not just that. Star Wars Z-Tours screwed up a whole studio's first project, which got that studio shut down. Family Guy Stars didn't make the prequel versions. You name it. And I'll say this. That's the consequences of what happens when Disney buys their brand. Things get shoved. When it starts, things get decanonized. Things get screwed up so they can make way for their version of the franchise. They wouldn't do that with Marvel until Stan Lee died. Now that Stan Lee's dead, they're fucking it up. And no one wants to play with Marvel anymore. And it's sad because this isn't the same Disney. I think what Bob Iger did, he completely radically changed the company culture for generations. The company culture that lasted until Michael Eisner's day from Waltz is gone. And now Roy Disney wants to do something video game related. Fortnite is their first target. I am eyeing their potential buyout of another company. N-Dog. Not the racist slur, but the video game company N-Dog. You know. Nintendo! I will mention, if they buy that and get rid of all the old properties, like Mario, The Legend of Zelda, Kirby, and Metroid that made their company great, I will call Disney out for that when the time comes. And I will review their first phase of the Disney MCU once I'm legally allowed to watch it. I will say this, though. I am not a huge fan of what Disney frickin' did to Star Wars. And I think what they're gonna do, then Nintendo is gonna be much worse if they rehash another story, the MCU story, for another time. I'm sorry, but they're gonna do the same thing they did to Star Wars and Nintendo. And that could mean, like, we might not get that much Hyrule Warriors games anymore, or entire things could be changed. Super Smash Bros. Company might have to be found because Disney, Mario, and the other franchises are incompatible with Nintendo, Disney. You name it, it's all happening because apparently Nintendo showed some Switch 2 controller icons in some of their games on Switch 1 and 2. And the Wii U 2 exists. Which is surprising because I think in that world, the world just ended. In 2016. And because of that, I gotta ask, people, do you really want Disney to screw with video games? That's what happened when TMS Entertainment bought Lupin the Third. Okay? Now, with Lupin the Third, I'll give them credit. Lupin the Third used to not be Dragon Ball. If that were the case, Dragon Ball would have not come out until the 2000s. Like Last Airbender didn't come out until the 2000s. So I'll give them credit, they didn't cosmically screw timeline just to make it happen. It forced Dragon Ball out of it creating Lupin the Third instead, wiping everyone's memories. So, yeah. Except a few, like mine, which I'm going through a wormhole because of it. They didn't do that. Thank God. And because of that, I'm starting to wonder, Disney, what are you going to change? We know you're going to change a few endings. We know you might have the incinerator scene ending for a while for Toy Story 3, and then give us the Andy leaves the colors of the toy scene. Not even giving us the original versions of Toy Stories, which will further confuse me. You will change Cars 3's ending to Jackson storms over for no apparent reason other than you want Cars 4 to be made. I mean, look, I get it. That's the only way you can make a Cars 4. So I'll at least give you some leeway there, but you can't screw with the timeline by doing that. You just release a new version of the movie in the same timeline, not create multiple versions of the same movie. Has this been going on always? Have you been responsible for Project Mirror? The Panderstone's just cornerstone? The timeline shifts? Because if you have, I got a word. Daddy Caleb's got a few words for you. I fucking hate what you did. I will not let it happen again. I will not let you manipulate with timelines again. I heard Dad won't let, God said God won't let it happen either. Which, apparently he said, God's pissed because we create multiple realities, it's all converging back into one reality. Yeah, apparently that's what happened. So I ask you, a real quick question. Why do you think doing that is okay, Disney? Because you have a vendetta? I think you do. Against the audience. I think you just want to enslave people. Like they did with anime. I'll say this. Lupin the Third. At least they did that decently. Disney ain't gonna do this decently this time. And only a few people, like me, are gonna get out of it alive. And with their soul and spirit and being alive. Being able to incarnate in multiple more timelines. And reincarnate still. Because of that, Disney, I know what you're up to. My psychology will frick with you, okay? Disney, I know you don't want me to grow out of you. But my gosh, buying Nintendo would only work if you had Mario, The Legend of Zelda, Kirby, and Metroid. Get rid of those old IPs that ruled. Place some new IPs are just Avengers ripoff. With like the whole 64% of life being wiped out into 50% of all life. With a Thanos stare teaser scene at the end of their version of Smash 1. And we've got a problem. We got a real deal problem here. Because of that, I'm not going to trust you ever again if you do that. You might lose me as a customer for a long while. Until you stop pulling this shit. Okay? Okay? But anyways, I will tell you this, Disney. I do think you can improve with the animation front, but you refuse. This is where I get into animation. How do you go from Pinocchio? How do you go from Pinocchio? Okay, no. How do you go from Pinocchio and Alice in Wonderland to Strange World and Wish 2023? Not the 2D version. How do you go from Snow and the Seven Dwarfs to Raya and the Last Dragon? Mediocre films. That's what I'm trying to figure out. Okay? Meanwhile, you have Sony Pictures going from Open Season, which was bad, to K-pop Demon Hunters, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, and Mitchell's vs. the Machines, and GOAT. You got, I don't know how this happened, Illumination going from the Minions, and capitalist Lorax movie may have cut down a few trees, to Migration and the Super Mario Bros. Movie, Smash Bros. Cinematic Universe, which is beautiful. How did he go? How did you go? How did DreamWorks go from Ants to Puss in Boots: The Last Wish? It's like every other studio except you is evolving. How did Paramount go from 2D weird Nickelodeon movie to Transformers 1. Yeah, this is getting serious. Sentinel Prime was the Autocon was this good enough villain that made me think I should take notes from him. What that guy did right, and take notes from Magnifico and what he did wrong. I mean, come on. You can't just grant every wish no matter how good or bad it is. You do that, you're gonna screw with the world like Bruce Almighty did. Okay? In fact, I'm gonna require everyone to watch Wish 2023 to watch that film. But yeah. Yeah. Then we got some more serious stuff to talk about. Like how you refuse to go back to 2D. I know you want to. That's why you need to go back to 2D, but I doubt you have the creative integrity to do so. If you refuse to make 3D CGI remakes of Disney classics without the live action element, just animation, you should just go back. And I'm honestly starting to wonder, how did the Jurassic World trilogy and the subsequent 4 do a better job at telling a better story than the Star Wars sequels? They actually evolved the story, you know. By having the dinosaurs finally go off the island and screw with the world like I imagined they could. That's what should have happened in the original trilogy. 1 should have been the same, but 2 and 3 should have been 5 and 6. And they should have been called parks. That would have been awesome. See dinos rampaging around the world in Jurassic Park 3. But now, we gotta wait until the next trilogy for them to do it right. At least they did it right once. Did Disney do Star Wars right after the original trilogy? Jar Jar Binks, anyone? Timbo John John Kai? Gimp Bimbo? Gaper Bingzoid? Jimulin Slice? Jinky Minus? And not to mention, you also got the fact you basically screwed with the whole timeline. What's worse is, well, you're gonna end things. For me, maybe. I don't convince my parents to give my systems back. You're gonna screw with everything. And look, Disney, I get it. You want to ruin the lives of many people by enslaving them, telling them they're not good enough for their films or you can't watch the other films. I know that. That's why I'm going to say this, Disney. You screwed up. Big time. And look, Disney. I understand you don't care. That's why I think I'm going to say this. As fair to last time, I'm going to say it. Why did you rehash the original trilogy, the sequel trilogy, and create all the First Order, the New Republic, the Rebellion, the Resistance, and the Empire, the First Order, and just rehash and do a remodel of the Stormtrooper outfit? Like, why? Oh. Because you didn't want to take risks. You want to play it safe until you get to screw a thing. And when people criticize you, you call them misanthropes anyway, and then you screw things even more. We're all catching on to you, Disney. You just got to stop doing what you're doing. Bye.